and welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. So, today we're going to be talking a bit about apathy. And so, the reference book that I want to use for today's conversation is actually the book called On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. So, yes, it's On Tyranny 20 Lessons from the 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. And in this book, it covers a lot of little things about like ways to not let being apathetic or not caring or succumbing to fascism or this greater power that seeks to kind of destroy and kind of letting that overcome us and not doing what we can to be against that. And so I'm going to use two pieces of art to kind of discuss this, one from 2024 and one from 2005. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so for our first work of art, we're going to be talking about a K-drama that came out last year, so 2024, in called Chief Detective 1958. Now, I won't be going in detail about this entire K-drama in case you really want to watch it. I am going to kind of talk briefly about the first episode. So if you want absolutely zero spoilers, let me hit you with the high notes. So 3 things that you'll need to know that's kind of unfortunate, but like unavoidable. So, cop corruption, don't do it. It's bad. Avoid paramilitarism. Um, and yeah, so those are kind of the topics that are going to be talking about. But to give a bit more in depth description, so Chief Detective 1958 is about a detective named by the name of Park Young Won who leaves his small town to go to the city of Seoul and becomes a detective. And when he gets there, he is met. He finds himself in a police division where there are actually corrupt police officers who are working with the gang members. And he, being from a small town, does not see that as something that is appropriate or the right thing to do. And so this show kind of is about him kind of trying to get out of that. And so I'm only going to talk about the first episode because I do think it's a really good show and I want you to go and watch the entire thing. It's only 10 episodes. Um, but yeah, jumping right into it, the ways in which this show kind of falls in line with our books. I'm going to do 3 topics. And so the first one is do not obey in advance. That's one of the topics discussed in On Tyranny. And how that shows up in this work of art is Park Young Won, he does not allow for the cops in this precinct to get him to allow for the negligence of the community and the corruption to take place. He doesn't obey them in advance. Not they want him to not go after the gang members who are kind of terrorizing the people of the city. They want him to succumb and to give up and to fall in line by letting them do what they want to do because because they have that type of power. And Park Young Won, coming from the small town, he does not give in. And also his direct superior also doesn't give in and is also kind of quietly fighting, which is really really important. Number 2, the next thing we want to talk about that I found in the book is take responsibility for the face of the world. And so this means to not let what people are trying to force on us to kind of exist. So like whether that be like the symbolism, so like symbols of terrible things that are kind of like trying to be promoted, don't let that kind of take place or be a thing. We want for people to believe in a better world and we want for people to not ignore what our world is looking like. So how this looks like in this show, so Park Young Won, he sees the terribleness that is kind of being left. He sees how the people in the city are afraid because the cops are not doing anything, and there are gang members all over the town, all over the city, who are kind of just taking advantage of the lack of police control and trying to essentially like they're beating on the civilians and taking what they want from them, and it's not okay. And Park Young Won acknowledges like this is not okay. We need to do what we need to do to make sure that these people are safe because these people are kind of relying on us. and he takes responsibility for that, and he seeks out other people who also would want to be on his side in that case. And that's something that's really, really important for us to do also in like just real life. Is like, don't let those things kind of stop us from being who it is we need to be. And the third point I want us to talk about is be wary of paramilitaries. So a paramilitary is like a unit who is almost like a tiny military. So you might see it as the police, you might see it as a militia, things of that nature. We want to be wary of those types of folks, um, because it can lead to danger. So in the show, this looks like we actually see towards the end of this first episode that not only are the cops corrupt in like allowing the gang members to beat on and take money from the civilians, they are also working with the American military to sneak guns to those same gang members. And so, yes, a lot of illegalism, and also like in creating this paramilitary of those gang members who are already terrorizing the town. When Park Young Won finds out about this, he does do his best to try to fight against that, to try to um, prevent that from happening. And so you want to be wary of those, and just I know like that's a show, and so it's gonna look different than how it would likely look in the States, but it's important that we do our best to avoid and to just be wary of them. So like we need to acknowledge them and know what's know that they're dangerous and be aware of that. And that's going to be really important. And I actually have a few more um, talking points that I'd like to take from this book, but I'm going to use the next piece of art to kind of discuss them. Alrighty, so our next work of art is actually Robots, the animated movie from 2005. Um, and it's really, really good. And I felt like this movie honestly perfectly encapsulates these next 3 points I wanted to talk about. So, for those who might not have seen it, a brief spoiler-free-ish discussion of what the movie is about is we have a robot who was born um, impoverished, sort of trying to wants to help his family out because he sees his family struggling, and then he decides to become an inventor, and he moves to the big city to try to become an inventor, only to find out that like his dreams of becoming an inventor is kind of thwarted or like gotten in the way of by a person who wants who who's pretty much a capitalist at the end of the day. Like they're not for the people, they are for their bottom dollar, and they're trying to go out of their way to make it so that like if you do not pay money, you will not survive. A very, very enlightening movie given the time period. Now that I like, now that I think about it, actually, but it's a really great movie. You should definitely watch it. There are a few things I'm going to have to discuss somewhat in detail to kind of show how it correlates to the points in the book that I want to talk about. But I think it's really, really important that we hear it, and there it like the 3 points that I'm kind of going to touch on won't nearly be enough for like if you decide to go watch this movie afterwards, that it won't, what's the word, it won't spoil the movie. Like there's more to the movie than just these 3 points that I want to bring up. But yeah, so first things first, we want to, another thing that we can find in the book 20 Lessons from the 20th Century on Tyranny by Snyder is you want to stand out. So Rodney is the name of our main character robot, Rodney Copperbottom, and he stands out because when he gets to this big city, despite everybody kind of having given up on a better future, Rodney still believes in helping those who need help. He believes in the famous words of see a need, feel a need, which was a famous saying by Big Well, which was a very famous robot inventor that he looked up to as a kid, who's supposed to be in that city and helping people. And so he listens to Bigwell and he still abides by that, and he stands out in that like he's able to help people in that way, and he's willing to help people in that way, and it's really, really cool. Um, Like, you don't have to blend into the background. You don't have to stick to what it is they want you to believe. You don't have to succumb to what it is they expect of you. You're allowed to stand out and to be your own person and to do what is right. The next thing that Rodney does is, which is another rule in one of the another lesson in this book, and is he believes in truth. So Rodney stands fast in his beliefs of Big Well, in seeing a need, feeling a need, helping those who cannot help themselves. Um, and that is really important, to believe in truth, believe in the what is actually the case and not in what it is that they're trying to force you to believe. So in the movie, they're trying to get people to buy upgrades instead of getting like just replacement parts for their own body. And so they are trying to force people to kind of almost, I guess this is actually going to run right into our next point. So the next point, and then I'm going to kind of talk about both of these points together. So the next point is, the next lesson is, be kind to our language. And so this is about intentionally using proper language. So this is about intentionally using proper language and not the fascistic type language that they want us to use. So like, people are, so a real world example would be like, um a lot of the government wanting us to use the terms of illegal aliens and not just like refugees or immigrants. Like, a lot of with like, and there's a lot of other things in that same nature of like, where there's a language or air of trying to dehumanize people around us and take away from what it is that's like actually for them, and like from them as a person, and get us to kind of dehumanize them even in our language. But with this point in being kind to our language is to not do that. Be wary of folks who are insistent on using these negative terms, on using these terms that make it or distance you from the reality of what's going on. And um, Rodney does this in the film. So Rodney is really intentional about not referring to the robots as scrap metal, because that's what the our antagonist is doing. He's referring to the people as scrap metal. If they can't afford to upgrade, they don't deserve to exist. And Rodney is very intentional about not referring to the robots as scrap metal. And he's even doing his best to like avoid language like outmoded and things that would diminish the, I guess, like humanity of the robots that he's in community with. He's doing his best to help those people. He's doing his best to like not refer to them as junk or refer to them as scrap metal. He sees them as, it is possible for you to continue to exist. We just need some parts. And he's helping folks in that way. And I think that's really, really cool. Um, and yeah, so I think it's really important, like in how this movie does show us that we stand out, that we exist and we show up for in how it is we want to show up, that we believe in truth, that we do not give in to the negativity and the harmful language and the um, lies often portrayed and given to us in order to get us to believe certain things. And it is also that important that we be kind to our language, that we use the proper language that doesn't automatically kind of get us out of our, get us into referring to actual people in ways that would distance us from the collective reality that we are all human. And I'm going to talk about not only that a bit more, but also some ways we might be able to make a difference in our next part. So, back to kind of what I wanted this entire conversation to kind of be about. Apathy is not an option. If we give in to those who seek to destroy us, if we stop caring and we stop bringing attention to how terrible things are around us, we are only ever going to get worse and worse. We cannot afford to give up. We cannot afford to ignore all that is happening around us because it is affecting us whether we like it or not. And so yes, apathy won't save us. Just as being blindfolded on like a waterfall won't save you from what is going to happen at the bottom of that waterfall, us being blindfolded to the reality of what's happening around us will not save us. And so it is important that we do not give in. It is important that we do not give up. Just as Park Young Won and Chief Detective did not get to this, he didn't get to the unit, see that everything was kind of crappy, and that like he was expected to just let these gang members kind of run wild in the streets. He didn't get there and then realize like, oh, I'm not actually able to help anybody. I'm not actually able to do anything. He actually does go out of his way to still try to make a difference in people's lives. And just as Rodney didn't get to the big city and see that like, oh, I'm here to do a very specific thing, but the person I look up to can't be found. The person that I want to be like, and everybody and their mother essentially is saying like, oh, what you're looking for, what you're believing in doesn't exist anymore. That's not the real world. He didn't get there, hear that, and then go back home and give up. He decided to do his best to not let that get to him. He decided to not care about the reality that he saw when he got there. And so we can kind of do the same. Like there are also some lessons in this book that talk about how we can kind of change course. And so one of those is investigate. So we don't let taking in all the information that they're giving us, so like that the world or society at large is giving us, just be given to us at face value. We need to like do the research or find people who can do the research, who know how to do the research and can tell us like, hey, this is actually not true or this is actually false, because people are quick to just throw numbers at you, especially if they think you won't understand, and because you likely maybe you don't understand, so you don't feel compelled to try to understand. We can't continue to be fed information that we don't know at face value. We need to get a better understanding of what is being talked about. We have to investigate. We have to get to the bottom of why things are the way that they are, and we can't just sit back and ignore that is actually happening around us. Another lesson that we can do that's in this book that is also really really important, and I feel like I kind of mentioned it in several other episodes. Um, Make sure we get to know the community around us. We are not going to always be online. We are not going to always be behind a screen. You need to talk to people. We're going to have to talk to people. We have to be able to communicate with people. Knowing those around us is going to be very, very important, especially when it comes to fighting against tyranny, because those closest to you are going to be those that you're fighting up against or fighting with against this. Um, because there's been, I believe there's actually already been an article or something that happened, I think in another country. If I'm gonna link the little article I found below, but Wi-Fi went out and like literally almost everything was just like kaput for real. Like you couldn't access anything online for an extended amount of time, and that can be dangerous. So it's important that we know those who are kind of in our physical vicinity and do our best to work with those people, speak to those people, make community with those people, because that's who we're working with essentially when it comes to fighting against this. And the third lesson that I want to kind of talk on for this particular section is be as courageous as you can be. Both Park Young Won and Rodney Copperbottom are courageous in that like they don't give up, in that they also don't sit still. We can't be meek and small when our lives and the lives of those we are in community with are at stake. To stand up against what it is that we're kind of standing up against, to stand up against the fascism, to stand up against the reality of the world around us, we can't be meek and humble and afraid and want to avoid what it is that we are trying to be a part of. It is important that we be as courageous as we can be. And something actually, there's a line in Chief Detective that is kind of repeated. You see it, it's repeated at least twice in the very first episode, and it's really really cool. And so the line essentially is, "It doesn't hurt for someone like me to exist." Because when Park Young Won first gets there, the only person that's kind of is like against the corruption of the unit is like his direct supervisor. And so after Park Young Won sees the reality of everything kind of happening around him, Park Young Won is like, "Why are you still here then? Like, if this is so terrible, why are you still here?" And he's like, "It doesn't hurt for someone like me to exist. For someone who is actively against this reality, it doesn't hurt for someone like me to exist." Because he, like, sure, he kind of is constantly like shouted down or like ignored when he wants to do the difference, make the difference, but he is there to like continue to be like, "That's wrong. We're actually not supposed to do that. Like, this is what the legal thing is. Like, legally we should be able to do this, even if like they're the actual chief of the unit is the one that's going on about like, "Oh well, I'm going to ignore you and do this corrupt stuff anyway." He's still that voice to be like, "No, actually that's not okay. We should look at this differently," or something like that. And so he like, that guy's like, "It doesn't hurt for someone like me to exist." And the same can be said for another character in the show who say the same thing. And then it's like, there's like, all right, well now there's at least three of us who believe that like, hey, it doesn't hurt for three of us to exist. And honestly, the same can be said with Rodney Copperbottom, in that like, it doesn't hurt for someone like him who believes in a better future, even amongst all of this kind of terribleness that's happening around him. It doesn't hurt for someone like him to exist. It doesn't hurt for someone who believes in a better future, who wants to fight for that better future, to exist. And just, and so we can also be those people. It doesn't hurt for people like us to believe in a better world, who believes in a better future, a better reality for us and all of those around us. It doesn't hurt for people like us to exist, but we also can't be meek. And so, yeah, we can't do this alone, and we can't hide or ignore what is happening in front of us. So maybe caring about the future that we want to have too can be in art like everything else. Also, our questions for the week. So, question one: what are some other works of art you feel kind of fit this theme? Two, question two is, what are some other ways you think could help people to not be so apathetic about the world around them? Like, how do you think we can make people care? And question three: what are some of your favorite works of art that you've seen recently that you'd like to share? And last but certainly not least is this week's awe moment. So this week, the awe moment. So the art that kind of made me think this week, and I feel like it can kind of be related to the topic at hand. So I kind of have been reading the autobiography by Cicely Tyson of As I Am, I believe it's called, and it's really good. And something I find really fascinating in this is that way in which she chose to kind of navigate protest and believing in a better world. She chose to do it through her art. She chose to intentionally choose roles that she felt elevated the Black human experience, and showed the humanity of Black people as a people. And I think it's relevant because I feel like so often people expect for protests or revolutionizing to look a very specific way. And in this book, she was really really close friends with Maya Angelou, with folks who were actively protesting, and she, however, never did protest in the same way. she chose a different way to do it. Like there are ways to stand out and ways to show that you believe in a better future, even if it doesn't look like the traditional way. And I think it is important that we acknowledge those differences and that like that reality that it is okay for um, this world to show up in the way that it does, for it to show up in the way of how it is you feel you can best contribute, because your contribution is going to be important. Um, and I know not everyone is going to be able to contribute in the same way, so it's best to do your best to contribute in the way you know how and show up in the way you know how and be loud about that. So yeah, that's really good. And the book's also really good. You learn a lot about Cicely Tyson, um, and a lot of the stuff she went through, and a lot of the and just her life in general. And it's actually really interesting. I'm finding it fascinating. So yeah, that's the art for this week, and that's all I have for you all today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.